The Adventures of Toad, Part 3. Meanwhile, Toad was walking briskly along some miles from home. "Smart piece of work, that," he remarked to himself, chuckling. "Poor old Ratty, a worthy fellow, but very little intelligence. I must take him in hand some day and see if I can make something of him." He strode along till he reached the little town where the sign of the Red Lion reminded him that he was exceedingly hungry. He marched into the inn and sat down to eat. He was about halfway through his meal when a familiar sound made him start and fall a-trembling all over. The poop-poop drew nearer. The car could be heard to turn into the inn yard, and Toad had to hold on to the leg of the table to conceal his overmastering emotion. Presently the party entered the room, hungry and talkative. Toad listened for a time. At last he could stand it no longer. He paid his bill and sauntered round quietly to the inn yard. "There cannot be any harm," he said to himself, "in me only just looking at it." The car stood in the middle of the yard, quite unattended. Toad walked slowly round it, musing deeply. "I wonder," he said to himself, "if this sort of car starts easily." Next moment, hardly knowing how it came about, he had hold of the handle and was turning it. As the familiar sound broke forth, the old passion seized on Toad and completely mastered him, body and soul. As if in a dream, he found himself somehow seated in the driver's seat. He swung the car out through the archway, increased his pace, and, as the car leapt forth on the high road, he was only conscious that he was once more Toad at his best and highest. Toad the terror, Toad the lord of the lone trail. "This ruffian," said the chair of the bench of magistrates, "has been found guilty of stealing a valuable motor car, of driving to the public danger, and of gross impertinence to the police. Mr. Clerk, what is the very stiffest penalty we can impose for each of these offences?" The clerk scratched his nose. "Some people would consider," he observed, "that stealing the motor car was the worst offence, and so it is. But checking the police undoubtedly carries the severest penalty, and so it ought. Supposing you were to say 12 months for the theft, 3 years for the furious driving, and 15 years for the cheek, which was pretty bad sort of cheek, judging by what we've heard. These figures, added together, tot up to 19 years. Better make it around 20 and be on the safe side." "Excellent," said the chairman. Then the brutal minions of the law fell upon the hapless Toad. They loaded him with chains and dragged him from the courthouse, shrieking, praying, and protesting, across the marketplace, below the portcullis of the grim old castle, on till they reached the dungeon that lay in the innermost keep. The rusty key creaked in the lock, the great door clanged behind them, and Toad was a helpless prisoner in the remotest dungeon of the best guarded keep of the stoutest castle in all of merry England.